Welcome back to the podcast. Today, we are going to be talking about the difference between tracking, budgeting, and analyzing numbers because there is a huge difference between all three of those words, especially as it relates to money. And the reason that we're talking about this is we've had a lot of clients just in the last, I would say, 2 or 3 weeks message us and say, okay, I've been tracking. Now, how do I figure out what to budget for? And then one of our clients summed it up in a question that was so good that I wrote it down exactly how she said it. And I'm going to read it to you. She said, I feel like I'm behind the money and never in front of it. I feel like I'm good at tracking what's already been spent, but how do I shift to where the money goes before it goes out? And she basically just defined two of those terms for you. She defined tracking and she defined budgeting for you in the most simple, understandable way ever. And we thought that this was incredibly important to talk to you about because we already know that you hate the word budgeting. You hate thinking about budgeting. You hate anyone who says, well, if you want to do this, then you need a budget for it. We know that you hate it, and that's okay. But we're going to give you a whole mindset shift today on why you've been doing budgeting wrong, and that's why you hate it. So, Marley, I want you to kick us off with tracking. What do we feel like tracking is, and why is that so important?
Yeah. So tracking is what we want you to do is think of them as completely different things: tracking, budgeting, analyzing. Tracking is meant to be an objective task of simply putting data somewhere. So if you have a spreadsheet or if you're doing paper, it's just about you looking at where your money is going and writing it down as if you are given the job of being Marley's money manager and you're just opening up Marley's bank account to input the spending, the income. So just the data, your job is just to record it. So we're not attaching feelings in this moment that we're tracking. We're not judging ourselves. We're not being upset with ourselves that we spent more in one category, like maybe groceries was a little out of control. Maybe you had a vacation this week, and so there was a lot more on the credit card than usual. We're not thinking about this from a place of we're not having feelings about it. Okay. We're just putting the data into our spreadsheet or into our system. We're looking at the numbers objectively. That is as simple as we can make tracking.
What has already been done?
What has already been done? You're right. It's the past. That's what I think you said that to me earlier. You were like, tracking is all about the past. It's about just looking at what already happened and then writing it down. And I think that's a really nice way to look at it because we can't change the past. So let's not have feelings about it. Let's just track it. And that is the first step. So money management involves these 3 steps. The first step is just data input. The second job that you have when it comes to managing your money is the budget. It's the budget. So this is, in the most simple way to word it, it's just having a plan for your money. So you plan to spend $600 a month in groceries. You can plan these things. And the reason we've set it up in this order, track, then budget, then analyze, is that most people make the mistake of looking at the word budget as a dirty word and making a budget for themselves, for either their business or their family, kind of based on nothing, like pulling a number out of the air. Like, well, we have 4 people in our family, so based on Google, we should be spending $400 a month in groceries, right? Or based on what other people in my area are saying they spend, $400 is probably what we should budget for groceries. So that's what we're going to write down. Mm-hmm. And so they make the mistake, and this is what we are seeing, that you're making the mistake of creating a budget based on sort of what you think other people are doing, or just sort of pulling numbers out of thin air.
Guessing.
Yeah. And so what we want you to do is track first, because that is data. And data gives us the capacity to analyze. So data gives us the capacity to go, okay, I've been spending $500 a month on average for the last however long you were able to track. So we get our clients to track just 1 month at a time, but the goal is then to get the whole year put into a spreadsheet so that you have so much data to make decisions on. And when you can look at that data and go, wow, we actually spent $1,000 a month in this category, and we're just going to use groceries as the example. it goes, okay, well, now setting the goal, the budget of $400 a month in groceries is just crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Either we've been including eating out in the grocery budget and we've been eating out a ton, or we've been genuinely spending that on groceries at grocery stores. So setting a goal now of 400 from 1,000 is just wildly too far of a gap to try to bring it down. And I'm not saying it's impossible. I don't know your situation based on this, pretend example, but maybe it is possible, but that feels like a crazy stretch. So maybe we set it for 800 or 750 or 600 is a big stretch, but it now gives us some actual data to be able to create a budget from that will not just set you up for failure. Like, because if you don't hit 400 every month, then you're just going to feel like you're failing and that money is hard. And that's not what we want. So that's budgeting. It's having a plan for your money, but we don't like to budget unless we have some data to create a budget from.
When you budget from a place of, I don't have any data, but this is what I'm going to set the budget for. We're going to spend $400 a month on groceries for a family of 5 people. I think that was the example. What you have done is you've told your brain $400 is the limit. And if we go over that, we are doing something wrong. If we go over that, then we have failed. If we go over that, then we are not good with money, right? What happens is your brain kicks you into restriction mode. So when you put $400 as your budget with zero information, if that is a fact or not, your brain hangs out over here in restriction. We've talked about the pendulum before, like swinging back and forth. You're restricting. You cannot spend over 400. If you spend over 400, what are you doing? And then you start to fixate on a number that has not realistic for your family, not realistic for maybe even the state you live in, because, taxes, groceries, everything is different. So you're living over here in restriction and you hate it, by the way, because restriction's not fun for anybody. And one bad day happens and you swing all the way over here to screw it. I've been really good. We deserve it. I work really hard. I had a good day today, or I had a terrible day today, and you just spend money. Maybe it's at the grocery store.
We'll figure it out later.
We'll figure it out later. Right. So then what happens? Your guilt, your shame, I can't follow through with the goals that I have set for our family start to kick in. And you pull it way back over here to, okay, next month I'm not spending more than $400. You have put yourself in an impossible situation. You cannot budget that way because your brain kicks in to try to keep you safe. Your brain kicks in to tell you like, oh, this does not feel good. And what you're feeling is the habits with your money are not feeling good. It's not the actual budget. The budget works because all a budget is to keep you in a boundary that you have set for yourself, that you have said, I am willing to spend this much in this category. And then after we've hit that threshold, then I'm not willing to spend any more because I have goals that need the money that I would spend there, right? You cannot budget from that place. You cannot. And that's why you keep giving up. That's why when you hear budget, you like literally put your hands up and you're like, oh, nope, not for me. I've tried it. Not going to work for our family. Tracking is essential to be able to budget. And when you've budgeted for a certain thing, we're going to stick with groceries for over a period of time, then you get to look at the data again and say, wow, we budgeted 1,000 or 800. We've budgeted 800 for the last 3 months, but we've only spent 500. Well, now what you've done is you have made it more of a challenge. It's a game instead of it being like a restriction. And you just decreased your budget, not from a place of I cannot spend that money, from a place of we are planning where it's going, and now we have control over what's being spent. That is the magic of these 3 working together: tracking, budgeting, and analyzing. If you're not watching this on YouTube, my hands are like all over the place. But you can't do one without the other. You can't track. That's not enough. You can't just track because, like our client said, I feel like I'm always behind the money and never in front of where it's supposed to go. How do I make it do what I want it to do instead of just writing down what I did with it. You cannot have tracking by itself. It doesn't work. You cannot have budgeting alone. It doesn't work by itself. And you can't analyze numbers that you haven't tracked.
This is, and I want to be clear, this client is a fairly new client in our world. And so she's at that place where she just got herself all of her data inputted for the year, inputted. And she is now starting to analyze. And so she came to us with this question that we were like, yes, you've got step 1, you've got step 2, and now it's our job to start analyzing and setting that budget for you and really creating a plan for what do you want? This is what you've been doing. Now we have a clear picture based on this data. Now we see where your habits are. We see where your money's been coming from, where it's been going. And now we get to start being more intentional and basing the decisions that you make moving forward on the data that's in front of us. It's objective. It's not about feelings, and it's not about making a wish for your money. It's about creating a plan based on this information. So we know what's reasonable. We know what's going to give you wins and keep it motivating rather than, making budget this dirty word that we want to avoid. And I'll say in my family, when I was setting budgets, and I use groceries because we all can relate to groceries. Everybody's got to eat to live. I had Googled what is a reasonable budget in our area. I had even asked other families in like moms groups on Facebook, what are you guys spending a month on groceries for your family? And my data told me that what other people were telling me was reasonable was just not even close for our family. It just wasn't. We have a lot more people. It's not as simple as this much per person per month. Like it really didn't add up. And we were spending so much more. Now we've been able to draw that back and make some changes and analyze that budget and analyze that plan and then create a new plan to bring that number down to a place that I felt good, but it's still nowhere near what Google will tell me is reasonable because I've got a family of 6. And also the other thing to consider there is one person's definition of groceries is not going to be the same as yours, because a lot of people will include things like household supplies, toilet paper, paper towel, extras in their grocery budget. Others will not. Some people include eating out in their grocery budget. Others will not. So make sure you're not comparing apples to oranges when you're doing some research on what is reasonable to put into this category and how many things are you including in your definition of that category. That was a big eye-opener for us. The ability to then analyze is what we're talking about now. So your analysis is that third step. After we've tracked and we've put the data in, we've made a budget based on the data. Then as you're doing your money dates, if you do them daily, weekly, and definitely at the end of every month, at the very least, you should be doing them once a week. But you should be looking at the budget that you have and the tracking that you've inputted, the data in front of you, and comparing, has your spending lined up with the budget? When you do this weekly, it allows you to stay between those guardrails that you've set for yourself. And it allows you to really make real-time decisions before the spending happens, which is what our client was asking us.
Yeah.
Right, Becca?
Yeah. The analyzing part is fun. It sounds like a really boring word. And we admit it sounds like a boring word to us too, just, out in the world.
So fun.
Analyze. Ew, nobody wants to do that. But it actually can be fun when you have the data to analyze, because we can do things like, hey, in the month of August, you said you went way over budget in this category, but what was happening in August? Oh, I have 3 kids and all 3 of their birthdays are in August. And we also went on vacation in August. So we didn't have as much of a plan with groceries, and we went over budget because we had to plan for 3 different parties and the food for 3 different parties. It's no longer like, God, I went over budget. I cannot get this right. I cannot stop spending money. It's remove yourself from that story and you look at it and say, what was happening? Was it a crazy month? Was my husband working nonstop? Was he out of town? Did that create me having a lot more on my plate? And I went to the grocery store multiple times because I kept forgetting things. Like, what was happening? That's what analyzing is. What was happening? Where were you emotionally? What was happening in your family? Did your kids have special events? Did you have an anniversary or a birthday? Or like, you get to look at it from all angles. You like get to pick the numbers up and look at them from literally every angle and go, "Oh, well duh, no wonder I spent over on groceries. We had to feed all the people that we invited for the birthday party because we said we would." You cannot you can't tell yourself you failed when you haven't done all 3 steps, and that's what we're seeing. We're seeing, a lot of our clients try to choose one of those steps. "Okay, I'm just gonna track for the whole year." Great. What is that telling you? "Well, I don't know. I'm just, like, making sure all the numbers are in place." Perfect. When are we gonna, like, look at what the numbers are telling you and set a budget? "Well, I know that I usually spend, like, $300 a month on this." Okay, great, but do you have to? Like, is it just because that's what you do? Or is that where you want that money to go? Then we get to set the budget, intentionally set the budget from real data. And if you're analyzing like feelings, of course your feelings are always going to tell you you did really bad last month. You spent a lot of money. You're no closer than you were 2 months ago to your goals. You keep making the same mistakes. You keep overspending. You keep doing this. I have to do that. Analyzing your feelings are always going to point you to what you've done wrong or mistakes that you've made. When you analyze the numbers can tell you how to move forward to get where you want to go. So I obviously could talk about this for years, but we are not going to talk to you about this for years. Do you have anything to say before we wrap up, Mar?
Yeah, a lot, but I'm going to rein it in because we have a whole other episode that we wanted to touch on on that topic that's coming to my mind. But I do want to say that I have said to you many, many times in my money management journey that just the act of knowing my numbers. So if I were to, like, let's give an example, like I was behind a few months in tracking and I finally took the time to get it done, in the beginning of my journey. And just the act of getting the numbers in front of me, having the data, I would message you. And I've done this so many times where I've said, "Becca, I know nothing has changed. Like nothing about my financial situation, my money has changed. All I did was create awareness around where I'm at. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was, or even if it is, even when there's been times where the revenue isn't matching the spending, I'm like, I just feel so in control. I'm so excited."
You told me last week, you were like, "I feel so much better just knowing the actual numbers." And I'm pretty sure you used the word relief. I feel so relieved that I don't have to think that these numbers are where they are, but they're on paper and now I can see them and release them from what I've been thinking for weeks.
Right. And that's, I think, the point that I want to drive home. Like, I'm years into my money journey. There's a lot of newness happening over here with new businesses and figuring out new systems. But that is the reality, though. Like, your money management is like, I want everyone listening to stop thinking of budgeting and money management as like a nice to have that only organized people have, and start thinking of it like dishes. Start thinking of it like vacuuming your floors. Like, you have to do that for the rest of your life. You really do. And I know that's like a boring analogy, but it's just a fact. Like, you have to bathe. You have to take care of your
Right.
teeth. You have to clean the dishes every day. Like, there are certain tasks that you're going to have to just accept that you have to do for the rest of your life. And your money management is a task that everybody needs. It's a skill, and it's a life skill, and it's something that everybody needs to prioritize building skills around. And it's so much easier than it's made out to be, for all of the reasons Becca talked about, with that yo-yo that happens when we go kind of all out budgeting and restricting, and then yo-yo back the other way. And I just want to empower our listeners to know that money management is simple when you have a plan and when you have a system to follow. And it's really hard when you start with a budget and pulling numbers out of thin air.
Yeah.
And if I can do this, anybody can do this. If
Literally anybody can do this. If I pulled myself out of $90,000 of debt and I now own a business talking about this thing, you could do it in less than 2 weeks. Less than
Right.
2 weeks.
Right. And so our goal is, we want you to stop cringing at the idea of a budget and the word budget. We want it to not be scary and intimidating. We don't want it to be a dirty word, because it's not as hard as you think it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are inspired, which we hope you are today, to want to just take one step forward, we would encourage you to sign up for our text list and just get some nice friendly reminders right to your phone every, a couple times a month. And that is just one thing that you could do just to start making money management top of mind. If that's all you have in you right now, just make it something that you think about right now, just so you can start moving in that direction. For those of you that want a little bit more action, Becca, why don't you tell them about our free masterclass?
If you go to the link in our bio on Instagram, our Instagram is Mind Her Business Official. Go to the link in our bio and you can get our free masterclass on demand in your email immediately. Own your finances like a true CEO. So you're going to see, once you do take this step, once you do the tracking, budgeting, and analyzing all together, not separately, what is waiting for you on the other side, the peace of mind that's waiting for you on the other side of that, the ability to make decisions very quickly and very efficiently and confidently, that's waiting for you on the other side of getting control of your money. You have the opportunity to change your whole life. Do not let it go. You have the opportunity to change your entire life. And not only that, you have the opportunity to change your entire generation of like the way your family looks at finances, the way that they think of it when they hear the word budget or finance or money. You have the ability to start today for free and start moving in the direction that you want to go. So click on that link in the bio. It's I think it's the very first one, free masterclass. Watch the masterclass, and then I want you to DM us and tell us your biggest takeaway from that.